Chapters 11 and 12. Jesus brought Lazarus back to life. He said that those who believe in him will have life that lasts forever.
I'm glad that you've joined me again for another lesson. Today our lesson is called Dead Man Walking. Now, if you're familiar with some of these New Testament stories, this one takes place in John 11, and we are learning about a man named Lazarus. Jesus and his disciples were quite far away from the town where Lazarus lived with his sisters Martha and Mary. Their town they lived in was Bethany. And when he received the message, he didn't come right away. And Mary and Martha knew how much Jesus loved them and their brother, but they didn't understand why he didn't come right away. See, Lazarus was really, really sick. And so they sent someone, and the person came back and said, he's not coming just yet. And Jesus told his disciples that this sickness won't end in death. God's power is going to be shown because of what happens. Well, several days passed, and Jesus' disciples must have wondered why Jesus was in no hurry to go help out his friend. But they also worried about going back to Bethany because, you see, the last time that Jesus was there, people had tried to hurt him, and they wondered, why would Jesus go where people had tried to hurt him? Well, Jesus said to his friends, his disciples, he said, our friend Lazarus, he's fallen asleep, and I need to go wake him up. So, of course, the disciples were even more confused, and why did they need to go all the way to Bethany if Lazarus was only sleeping? Like, what was the big deal? But then Jesus explained to him, Lazarus is dead. And Jesus wanted to go to Bethany so that his disciples would believe in him. See, even then, even though the disciples had been with him for quite a while, they still had questions. They still didn't understand how it all worked out. Well, when Jesus and his disciples finally did arrive in Bethany, Martha hurried out, and she wasn't as happy as she usually was when she saw him. She cried out, Jesus, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Now that's hard. That's hard because we have people in our families that are sick. We have people who die. And sometimes that's hard to understand why. Why did God choose to take them? Why now? Well, Martha was definitely struggling with that. And she was very upset with Jesus because she believed, and she knew that Jesus could heal. She knew that. Then Jesus said something surprising to Martha, and he told Martha that Lazarus would live again. Now that didn't make any sense to her because Lazarus had been dead for days. His body had been wrapped up and prepared for burial and had been put inside of a tomb. And probably by this point, his body was probably starting to smell because it was starting to rot because he was dead. The tissue in his body was no longer alive. Well, Jesus, of course, had other plans, and Jesus cried. The Bible, I've heard that that's the shortest verse in the whole Bible. Jesus wept, and he did. This was his friend. He loves his friend, and he was sad. And not only was he sad that his friend had to die, but he was sad that Martha didn't believe. He was sad that others didn't believe. Well, Mary came out, she hurried, and she fell at his feet. She cried out, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. It wasn't just Martha. Mary said the same thing. Everyone could see that Jesus loved his friends so very much, and their sadness made him so sad. Well, Jesus asked where Lazarus' body was. No, I'm sure Jesus knew, but he asked anyway where it had been buried, and Mary and Martha took him to the tomb. And Jesus said, take away the stone that covers the entrance to the tomb. And Martha thought Jesus didn't realize how long Lazarus had been dead, but they did it anyway. Jesus prayed aloud, and this is what he said, Father, I thank you that you always hear me, but I want everyone here to know that you hear, and I want them to know that you have sent me. When Jesus finished praying, he looked up and shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And at the sound of Jesus' voice, Lazarus walked out of the tomb, wrapped in the strips of cloth. Jesus told the people near Lazarus to unwind his grave clothes and let him go. Everyone was astonished, and of course they were enormously happy, especially his sisters Mary and Martha. Their best friend Jesus had not only cared for them by returning to their town, but by returning their brother to life. And he had shown them just how amazing God's power is, and that it is even stronger than death.
Psalm 100, verse 5. The Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Psalm 100, verse 5.